Vietnam Veterans Against the War, and also for the Right to Heal campaign. I come from a family of 4 generations of veterans, and we either used the VA or died. And I'd like to ask Robert Jones to give an invocation. Thank you, brother.
Let us pray. Gracious God, as we come to you at this time, we ask that you continue to be with us this time of sharing, this time of expression, this time of learning. Continue to be with all of those that are here on today. Be with those who are yet on their way to be with us. Continue to bless us in every way that you see fit. It's in Jesus' name we pray and give thanks. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
So my name is my name's Roberto Clack. I'm an organizer with the Right to Heal campaign. You know, this was something I worked formerly with the group Iraq Veterans Against the War, and through that experience, just having done the work, we came from a completely different background. I'm not a veteran myself. I was an organizer who was a paid staff person, but we realized that the healthcare needs, even within our subsect of veterans, was extremely intense, and that people had problems with the VA, so we organized. And one of the great things that happened is we've been able to work with unions, the workers. A third of the workforce here is veterans. So when you talk about privatizing the VA, really you're talking about attacking veterans, you're talking about diminishing their health care. The health care here works. And we're proud to work with the unions, we're proud to work with the nurses, the technicians here, the security guard, or the police officers, excuse me. We're proud to work with the entire staff here, and there's so many dedicated people to the VA. This is a public institution, a single payer model that works. And you know, we've been meeting the last since September, and this has been a particularly hard 2 weeks. Just yesterday, the big privatization bill, HR 5674, passed. Thank you. The privatization bill 5674 passed yesterday, 347 to 70. It's going to put billions of dollars into expanding the private voucher program. So this is something that, you know, and AFGE's taken a lot of leadership in leading this fight, both here in Chicago and nationally. You know, they represent the most union members from the VA in the country. And this, out of the whole federal workforce, the VA, it's like a third of your union members, or
40%.
It's 40% of their union members. So anything that dismantles the VA hurts these unions, this workforce that provides a middle class, steady union job. You know, so this fight, even though we've seen it coming, it's really happening now. We're gonna do what we can to stop Senator Duckworth and Durbin from voting for this bill. We have been meeting with them and doing legislative visits and educating them as well. I mean, we've had to educate ourselves. We've had to educate veterans. We've had to educate union members. We've also educated our public officials that this is the wrong path. You know, school vouchering does not perform better. It's just better resource because people can make a profit off of it. We don't want to see the VA go down the same direction where the profit motive is the incentive for providing the care. The care works, and it can get better, but it'll get better if it's publicly supported, if it's properly funded, if our workers here get some safe staffing ratios. This is what's going to save lives. We have the resources to do it, but what we need is we need to organize for political power to push back against this agenda. The Koch brothers are putting billions and billions and billions of dollars to make this a for-profit system. And if, you know, one of the veterans at our first town hall said, you got to take out the veterans first. And then you go after Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid. And that is the agenda here. So we're here, we know we have a big fight. It has been a hard week, but this is something that we're just starting. This is something that we're going to be in the fight for the long haul for. So this is why we're here together today. I couldn't be prouder than to be with this group of people, with SEIU Healthcare, with AFGE, with Nurses, National Nurses United. It's been awesome working with the unions, also the Veterans Group, Coalition of Veterans Organizations, VVAW, IVAW, now About Face, and the wonderful community of supporters, Chicago Jobs with Justice, the Workers' Rights Board, to name a few. And with SEIU Healthcare, yes, thank you. I will not forget. So I'm going to pass it on to, I mentioned this a little bit, but I'm going to pass it on to Sarah, who's going to, Aaron? No, I'm going to pass it on to, I forgot the petition stuff, but we'll come back to that. So we're going to get a legislative update from Sarah.
Hi everyone, my name is Sara Kuntzler. I work for the American Federation of Government Employees. As Roberto said, we represent VA employees across the country. I wanted to, first I want to say that although we planned this event many weeks ago, our presence here this evening is pretty timely because this vote just took place in the House yesterday. And there will be a Senate vote very quickly early next week. And we have a small window of time to potentially impact the outcome of that Senate vote, which we are hopeful for. So I wanted to kind of run through the specifics of the bill so you understand exactly what this bill does, what our biggest issues with it are, and some fixes that we've recommended. And so I'm just gonna, so the bill number, and they did a lot of acrobatic procedural moves in order to kind of shove this thing through as quickly as possible. And so the bill number has changed. So if you're following the legislative numbers at all, it may be totally different than the last thing that you heard. But the new bill is Senate Bill 2372. That is the bill that was voted on in the House last night, and Roberto mentioned the vote. And we want to publicly thank the members of Congress here in Illinois who voted against that bill, and that was Congresswoman Kelly, Congresswoman Schakowsky, Congressman Gutierrez, and Congressman Rush. We were very excited that they stood with us in spite of some pretty difficult circumstances. And I do want to acknowledge that the veteran service organizations the Big Six have signed on to support this bill because there is a caregiver benefit expansion component to this bill that they have been working very hard on, and which AFGE and this coalition certainly supports the expansion of caregiver benefits. We are just not willing to give up the other aspects of the VA that we hold so precious, and we I know that the veteran service organizations do have some concerns around the other pieces in the of the bill, but they made a calculated decision that this was their only opportunity, I think, to get this done. And so I just want to put that out there, that we understand there's a lot of political pressure from the VSOs. Having said that, the Concerned Veterans for America, which is a Koch-funded organization specifically created to privatize the VA. They have a 20-year plan, is that right? 20 or 30-year plan, which maybe it will be a little faster than that, to privatize the VA. They have been actively lobbying for this bill alongside the veteran service organizations. And anytime you're on the same side as the Koch brothers, you really should be taking a second look at what's involved, what's really incorporated into this bill. So there are 7 sort of major components that we're concerned about, and so I'm going to run through them, try to run through them pretty quickly. So one of the things that the bill does is allows primary care to go into the private sector, which is a huge component of what the VA does. and really opens up a broad array of service, of care into the private sector. And there's, I will say that there is no pathway back. So once a veteran is referred out into the private sector, that provider is not required to refer them back into the VA. And if you go to a primary care doctor and there's something else wrong with you, you get referred to somebody else or somebody else after that. A private care primary care provider is not going to be referring you back to the VA. They're going to refer you to their own network. And so we fear that once a veteran is out there, specifically into primary care, but other options as well, we're not going to see that veteran come back, and they're going to find it difficult to come back unless they specifically ask to come back into the VA. So that is a huge component. The second, so we are asking that there be limited circumstances under which a veteran is referred out for primary care. Maybe they live in a rural district where there isn't that option. We understand that there may be some specific circumstances, but let's rein it in and not just let anybody go out into the primary care private world. The second is there is the way that the bill is written. It allows for extensive use of walk-in clinics, urgent care, and also mental health services. So there's no limitation on when someone can go into an urgent care, and of course this has similar repercussions as the primary care component. So we want to make sure that there is a limit. We're suggesting 2 visits per year where a veteran can go into a walk-in clinic to get their care. But once again, this is just more opportunity to send people out into the private sector as opposed to having them to get their care at the VA. The third thing that we're concerned about is that they are allowed to close the secretary, whoever that might be, right? And we'll get to that in a second. The secretary has the discretion to privatize up to 36 service lines nationally. So service lines, can be any number of things, but a couple of examples are, substance abuse services, spinal cord injury, nursing home care, community living center programs, things like that can easily be, that can be easily lifted out of the VA and privatized. So nationally, 36 of these lines could be, and there's a whole list. In fact, you can go on the website of the VA and find that list. But so 36 service lines nationally, and 3 per facility, including outpatient clinics, which could wipe an outpatient clinic out pretty easily. So we are urging that there be no more than 12 service line closures nationally and no more than 1 service line per facility, because that just is an incredible latitude for privatizing specific services in the VA. The fourth thing is that there isn't really specific language to hold the private sector to the same level of care that the VA is held to. And we want there to be language in this bill that would mandate, the same level of care that veterans receive at the VA that they are receiving in the private sector. And we know from studies, there was a RAND study done in the state of New York, that the private sector is not ready for veterans to come into the private sector. They are not versed on the kind of medical conditions that veterans have that are unique to veterans. They are not in the habit of asking if a patient is a veteran. There's a whole host of things that are problematic in the private sector, and for us to just open the doors wide open and say, here you go, try and navigate through your way through here is really irresponsible of us to do. The next thing, and this is a pretty major and controversial component of the bill, it creates a BRAC-style process for analyzing VA facilities across the country. BRAC is used in the military. It's base realignment and closures. And so it's not being called a BRAC, but we're calling it a BRAC because it's the same thing. It would create an independent commission assigned by the president, 9 total seats. 6 would be assigned to veteran service organizations. 6 would be at the discretion of the president. So that could include right? All, private care providers. Then the veteran service organizations are far outnumbered. And that commission is assigned to, analyze VA's facilities, all VA facilities, including VBAs, across the country, and determining which hospitals to close, which facilities can be consolidated, and if you're a private sector, hospital, or you are, interested in your own benefit from getting money from the government that should be going to the VA, there's a conflict of interest there, right? And we don't know that they're gonna hold the veterans' interest. They're going to be looking at their pocketbook. So we're very concerned. It also takes a lot of the discretion and the control away from the Senate and the House. They can't say, well, we want to protect our hospital here in Chicago, or we want to protect, these CBOCs out in our rural area. The commission will make a recommendation that either is voted up or down. And the BRAC style process is rife with problems. It costs more money than it saves, and that's thankfully a little bit more controversial. And we're hopeful that some of our senators will try and pull it out of the bill, but we don't know that there's momentum to do that. We've heard some rumblings that people are unhappy with that component because it wasn't in the Senate bill originally, but was added in the House. And so that's one piece we're hopeful for, but as of now, it is in the bill. We also, number 6, want to make sure that there is a separation of funding, that we have specific funding set aside for the VA, we have specific funding set aside for private care, and we have specific funding for this BRAC commission, if in fact it does end up in the bill. And we don't feel comfortable that the language in the bill differentiates and sets, and mandates that clearly enough. And this has been our biggest concern throughout the process, is that funding is going to be siphoned away from the VA into the private sector. The private sector is more expensive, and so it can easily happen. We've already seen the Choice Act, the Choice Program, run out of money every single time before they were supposed to run out of money. And one of the reasons they're trying to pass this bill so quickly is because they need more money in the Choice Program. They're already out. And so what does that tell us? It tells us that it's far more expensive than we even understand. And VA money can easily be siphoned off, especially if we aren't deliberate about the way the funding is structured. And then finally, the last change that we are looking for is to require VA providers be considered federal contractors. Right now, the way the bill is written, for some reason, they are not deemed federal contractors, and they won't be held to the same standards that federal contractors are. So this could be, so this means they're exempt from normal regulatory safeguards, including audits, limitations on executive compensation, and even labor laws. So we are just asking for there to be, language, the same as any other federal contractor would apply to private providers for the New Choice program. So we feel like these are pretty common sense solutions. I'll just say 2 more things, and I will hand it off to our panel, our next panelist. But we don't have a VA secretary right now. The last nominee was, pulled his name out, and we have, there are 2 names floating around. One who is Jeff Miller, a former congressman, who, by the way, is now lobbying for a company, a so-called nonprofit that's providing mental health care for veterans and is positioning themselves to be the new private mental health care for veterans provider. So we know where he had a very clear record of supporting privatization of the VA. So to give this latitude to a secretary who hasn't even been nominated, let alone confirmed, is pretty irresponsible in our mind. And we are just asking Congress to pump the brakes. Let's get a secretary in place so that we are comfortable, we understand what responsibilities we are giving this person before we sign this legislation. And then I just, to reiterate that, that there is support for this bill. We understand that, this is going to be an uphill battle, and we're probably going to lose much of this fight next week. But just to remember who really is behind this, and that is the Concerned Veterans for America. And we need to continue to point that out to our members of Congress and our senators especially, because they're kind of holding the bag at this point. They're the last defense that we have against this getting into law. So I will stop there. I know we'll have time for questions at the end if you have them. So we'll move on to Adelena.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Adelena, and I am a registered nurse. I do work for the VA and have been in the VA for approximately 21 years. I have seen changes, and now as the director of National Nurses United here at Jesse Brown VA, our concerns is being able to provide the care to our veterans as needed. We need nurses here. Our hiring process is very slow. And it just came to mind today as I'm preparing for this how there's an incident occurring anywhere in the world, within about an hour, they're going to know everything about that perpetrator. However, here it takes a year to 8 months before we can get nurses on board. And we're in a critical stage for nursing because of there's a shortage, and that shortage is going to get worse pretty soon as we get the men and women in my age group will start looking towards retirement. We also need a retention program. So the money that they're sending to private sector will be pulling our nurses away from the VA, because the private sector has some of the same concerns that we do here at the VA. If they would invest in the VA and hire and give us the tools and stuff that we need, you would see 100% improvement here at the VA. So not only are they working from Congress, but they're working inside to implode the VA from inside out. And of course, if you don't have the staffing, you're going to have wait time. I was walking through the emergency room the other night, and one of our veterans were pretty upset. I think he had been there about 2 hours. But you can go to any emergency room throughout Chicago, and that wait may be even longer than 2 hours. So they're selling them a bill of goods that is not really happening in the real world. Hospitals are being gobbled up, similar to how the airline was many years ago. I don't know if you all kind of can remember Eastern, TWA, Pan Am. And they went in, and they're pretty much doing the same thing with hospitals as they did that. The hospitals are big business now, and they're on Wall Street. And as Wall Street get their hands into anything, you know they don't care about us. They don't care about the average working American. Our veterans that come through our doors are not the veterans that I think this administration would invite to have dinner with them at one of their towers or one of their golf courses. They're the ones that are full of, all the garb and everything to show their accomplishment in the military, but many of them won't be the first line veterans that we're used to treating here. You go to some of the nearby hospitals. We used to have Lakeside VA, and that was closed. And one of the reasons we hear rumors that it was political. So there are some hospitals throughout this area that are not going to welcome the veterans that we welcome here. Our nurses are here because we're dedicated to our veterans. I can certainly go to U of I. We've got nurses left here. They're making $15,000 more. You go down to Mount Sinai, they're making $10,000 more than what they're paying the nurses here. We're not necessarily asking for equity in pay. We just want to be here to take care of our veterans. We love our veterans. We care for them. Our heart is with them. And we fight every day to advocate for their health care here and to keep them here in the VA. And I can tell you one thing, come here and try to get in the parking lot during the day. If you just can find parking space, that indicates to me that we have more veterans returning to the VA than what the head of our government realizes. They want to come here for the treatment, and we want them here.
I should not have drank the bottle of water. So, I'm Erica Sloane. I was in the Air Force from 2002 to 2008, and I began receiving care here at Jesse Brown in 2015, early 2015, when I admitted myself in inpatient. I have PTSD. It's pretty bad. And back home, I went back home first in the civilian world and at school. Since I separated from the military, my issues, my military experience, or just that culture, it is not understood in the civilian populace, let alone even in my family. So, coming here, the staff is trained, and the care is good, but what matters most, or what has mattered to me most, was the ability of the staff to go a little bit further, to show you. You know when you fall in love, right? And you see a twinkle in your eye, in the eye, and it just, that's what's missing a lot of times. The recognition of me based on whatever it is, the stigma, the mental health stigma, just class, whatever it is. I'm often overlooked, and I'm not alone in that. Here, that has been the staff's primary, that's who they deal with. They know us. Now, the care, as I have mentioned, in terms of staffing, but also the laws that, VA Accountability Act, it's passed. It's helping privatize by creating divisions between us. Everybody wants to feel just a little bit fucking better than somebody else, right? So they exploit that. They exploit the class, whatever it is. And now, it's a lot easier to get in trouble for being kind, for showing enormous kindness. And it has terrible consequences. So I am encouraging us to not be afraid, to be kind. That's what matters. That's what saves your life, is that little extra love, that recognition. That's really all I want to say.
Testing 1 2 2. Testing 1 2. Good afternoon. Welcome to Jesse Brown VA Hospital, and to all the veterans that are here. I'm Reginald Wells. I've worked at Jesse Brown for 30 years now in the EMS department. I'm also a proud veteran who served in the Coast Guard for 7 years. Jesse Brown VA is a special hospital staffed by veterans like myself who care for other veterans. I'm proud that I still get the opportunity to serve my country and support my fellow vets, but in a different way. Jesse Brown is more than a hospital and clinic, it's also a community. But our community veterans is now under attack by the very Congress that claims to support our veterans. On Wednesday, Congress just turned right over and around and voted to outsource and privatize our health care, to privatize the market. Let me be crystal clear. As someone who served my country and as a worker with the VA system, I can tell you that veterans do not want VA to be privatized. Exactly what the House of Representatives did when they voted Wednesday to adopt the Mission Act. The Mission Act. Can you believe what they are calling this bill, George Overwill must be turned over in his grave. Any veteran will tell you that achieving the mission is everything. Completing the mission is the essence of our duty. But to call the legislation that undermines and denies the integrity and quality of health care that veterans receive a mission is an insult. How did we get here? Well, the VA has been struggling with short staffing, being under-resourced, and hollowed out due to job vacancies for some time now. This is going to, staffing was set up to be privatized through the VA. But instead of providing more resources and investments, commitment to improve the VA, Congress just wants to take an axe to the healthcare system that the veterans rely on and trust. The agenda is wrong, it's immoral, it's also ineffective. I've got my own mission now for the U.S. Congress and Senate. I expect the senators to achieve this mission, stop the bill from being enacted. I demand that the senators confirm the VA secretary first before we go to dismantle the VA. I feel as a veteran, serving my country as a veteran, that they gave us a full check. Now they want that check to bounce. I don't think that is fair for us as veterans and our families. I think for all of us to call our senators, Ms. Duckworth and Mr. Durkin, to let them know that we're not going to stand for them. God bless you. God bless America.
Let's give it up to our nurses. Let's give it up to our veterans. And let's give it up to our union members who are also veterans, that's also who we're fighting for with the Right to Heal campaign, with the Save the VA coalition. That is why we are coming together. It's because of brothers like Reggie, who not only, he served our country for 7 years, he came back and he served his fellow veterans for 30 years at the VA, and they want to take that away from the veteran population. Veterans should be able to serve each other here, take care of people. Our nurses should be able to do that. They want to do that. They even take less money to do that. Sometimes it's because they care, and our veterans should be able to be taken care of without being worried about it, that their care is going to be profit-driven, a profit motive. So we're going to have we're going to open up the floor, but we're going to have a few calls to action first, and then a few more calls to action, and there's a press conference tomorrow. And we're going to move this thing along. But I'm going to bring up another veteran, a very good friend of mine, Aaron Hughes, about face Iraq veteran, friends for many years.
Thanks, Robert. Thank you all for being here. I feel like I need to put this down here for a second. That's fine. So first I want to say a few things. One, just a bit about me. I served in the Illinois Army National Guard from 2000 to 2006. I deployed to Kuwait and Iraq in 2003, 2004. When I got home, I got really active with Iraq Veterans Against the War, speaking out against the occupation of Iraq, speaking out against war crimes, and demanding that all my brothers and sisters got home. And then we started to realize that we all needed a lot of care when we got home, and that the VA here wasn't being fully staffed and safely staffed. And we started getting organized with our union brothers and sisters and demanding that this VA gets fully staffed. And to this day, it's not fully staffed. And that's something we're still demanding, that be fully addressed, because every time it's not fully staffed, it undermines the entire system. Second, just a few years ago, I started having to get all these crazy tests because I have a crazy lung condition that's like something like 90 people in the whole country have. And, you know, it was the VA doctors that helped find out about this disease and the fact that I only have basically one functioning lung. And they did all the tests that they could. They identified the situation, I got the best care I possibly could, and I was out in the Bay Area, and I was UCSF doctors were working at the VA hospital, outstanding care. I came here, I was working with Northwestern doctors, and then I needed one specific test. One test that they couldn't do here, that they had some special tests down the road at Northwestern that they wanted to do there instead. And so they asked me, hey, are you okay going down to Northwestern? We'll get it all set up so you can get this one special test. And so I went down to get that special test. And when I went down there, first off, the first thing they asked me is, well, who's your insurer? Well, I don't have insurance. I have the VA hospital. It's not insured. It's a healthcare system. And that's where they started to say, oh, well, you can't come in. You can't see your doctor. We spent 2 months scheduling this appointment with you all, and now you're telling me I can't walk in. Finally, back and forth. The VA person here that works with outpatient care called them, worked it out, bent over backwards, going through their administration so I could get my appointment. I got my appointment, it goes smoothly, and then guess what? A week later, I get a bill in the mail. And I call, and they say, oh, no, we're sorry. Northwestern says, we're sorry, we didn't mean to send you that. And they said, don't worry about it. 2 weeks later, I get another bill in the mail. And these bills, they just kept coming, and I kept calling and said, hey. And the reason why the VA hadn't processed it is because Northwestern went and sent the records back. Because, you see, for them, it's not actually about me. It's about ownership of care. They think they own my care because they provided it. Not me, where I think I own my care. And that's why we got to stand up and demand our senators, Senator Duckworth, Senator Durbin, to say no to this privatization of our care. I don't want anybody making profit off my care. And that's why we're asking people, one, to sign this petition. We got 3 asks. One, I'm going to pass around this petition. I want everyone to take it, bring it. If you want extras, we have extras. Please pass them around, and here's the sign-on for it. Please sign this petition. We're going to take it down to Senator Durbin and Senator Duckworth's office, and we're going to let them know that we stand against this bill, and that we don't believe it, and that we believe in expanding the VA care. We believe in fully staffing the VA. 2, we have a call-in sheet, which, do you have those here?
Oh, they're in the back.
So in the back, Matt, can you start passing them up? 2, tomorrow, we're having a press conference at 10 o'clock in the morning at Federal Plaza. We'd love all of you to join us. We're going to do an informational picket, and we're asking all of you on that time to call your senator. Call Senator Durbin, call Senator Duckworth. Let them know that we oppose these bills. And finally, when we got this room tonight, I was a little agitated. I found out that Zumba's going to be next door. And I was like, man, what? Are you kidding me? Like, we got to compete with Zumba? And I was like kind of fuming here a little bit in my seat for about, I don't know, most of the first half of the panel. And then I realized, no, that is what makes this place amazing. It has Zumba on Wednesday nights. Like, what private hospital has Zumba for their patients on Wednesday nights? Nobody's got Zumba for their patients on Wednesday. Free Zumba right here. If you're a veteran, you got free Zumba right here Wednesday night. You ain't getting that anywhere else, and that's why this place is important. That's why we got to stand up. That's why we got to call our senators tomorrow, and that's why we need everybody to sign this petition, because we believe in a fully funded VA and expanding the VA, not privatizing the VA. They say they want to fix, they want to fix the VA situation. They want to improve the VA. And all these VSOs are supporting this bill right now because of the expansion of the family care. And I'm totally supportive of that. But they really want to support veterans care. They say, we want that expansion of that care, and we want to make sure that every single veteran has access to the VA, period. None of these, oh, well, you only served 8 months, or, oh, no, like, you didn't serve overseas long enough, or, oh, no, you don't have the right disability status, or, oh, no, like, you got an other than honorable discharge because you're already dealing with MST, TBI, PTSD. Give me a break. They're afraid to give us fully funding because they know this is a model for a single-payer future, and that's why we got to fight for it, and that's what this is about.
All right. There we go. So we got some time. We're gonna open up the floor for questions or comments. Try to keep tell your story. You know, try to keep it to 3-ish minutes. Anyone?
I'd like to say
All right.
one more thing. As I'm listening to everybody, many of our veterans who work in the VA, we have private insurance, they don't go outside to get their care. They get their care here at the VA. So that says a lot, because for those of us in the medical field, we know where the best care is going to be. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be at a magnet-designated hospital. So it's very interesting that the many of our veterans who work here at this VA and other VAs, they get their care in the VA.
So, anyone?
Radio show on 1690 AM. If everybody just has a chance to know about it, you can call in, and that show will be a voice for not privatizing the VA, because the veterans are not getting heard in the regular media. They're just obviously not getting heard by the government for what we need the VA to expand and stay open and stuff. It's on Saturdays from 4 to 5 p.m., 1690 a.m. I forgot to bring a flyer, but next time we have a meeting, I'll bring one if you guys want to just write it down and tell other people about it. Also, I have made comments before coming to these meetings, and I have a whole lot of reasonings for why I need the VA. But one thing that female veterans are pretty invisible to the general public, and it's gotten much better in the VA, but I have had bad experiences with private sector providers. I have a little hearing issue in one of my ears, and a lot of veterans have it much worse. They have 2 hearing aids and stuff, and they're not even like 30 years old. I have heard twice in the private sector that I shouldn't have hearing loss because women are not in combat, and I was never by explosions. So they told me that. I tried to explain it. I also got a question about one of my back injuries twice. Well, why would they have you working on forklifts? So the prejudice and the invisibility of us, a lot of private sector nurses and doctors are very arrogant, and they bring that to their profession. And we can, as women, as female veterans, not that it's not for all veterans, but especially for us, we cannot afford to be in the private sector. They have no clue how to treat us. They don't even acknowledge that we're veterans. I've heard of a female veteran being told that her head injury was because of the way she was wearing her hair. And they just dismiss you like that. You can't get any kind of treatment. Female veterans are fighting this invisibility, but these people aren't listening because they're arrogant, and that's just the way they want to think it is. So I'm terrified just for that reason of not having the VA, and I hope that's something that everybody can look into, because I don't think it's something that people think of very much.
Hi everybody, my name's Howard Ehrman. I'm a retired physician who trained here in the 70s and also worked here. I want to thank all of you for bringing us up to date. I want to ask a strategic question and then make a statement. In this city and in this country, veterans work in lots of places, but where they work the most is in the public sector, period. We have the Chicago Teachers Union. There's hundreds of veterans, maybe thousands, who work in the CTU. It's inspired teacher strikes all over this country. We've had 6 in the last 3 months, and they're still going on. We have the largest local bus drivers in the country. Over 5,000 people are in ATU. We've got veterans, especially in the post office. It's the 2nd largest employer of veterans outside the VA in the non-military sector. So my question is, have you had time yet, or are you planning to meet with the unions, starting in the city and across the country, where there's lots of veterans in the public sector. So that's my question. The second thing about a statement, not one Democrat senator voted against the Choice Act 4 years ago. Not one, including Durbin. So what are we going to do now, or what's your plan? Like tomorrow, are we going to go to Durbin's office and Duckworth's office? Because even in the House, the majority of Democrats, voted for the Choice Act. So I have absolutely no faith in the Democrats, and I would just appeal to you that we've got to have another strategy than just hoping that our legislators that we elected are going to vote for us. Thank you.
Anyone want to? Reggie wants to respond.
Thank you, Doctor, for your service. Is it on? Can you hear me? Yeah. One thing I do know, the SEIU, we work with the teachers union all the time. That's what I wanted to let you know. CTA, I haven't seen us work with CTA too much, but 2000, I think that was 2008, I would say. I went over to the Damon exit over here, Ogden, I'm sorry, the Blue Line, the Medical Center. There's a union store there, her name was Angel for CTA, and I went over there, and her and I had a petition out. We got 150 signatures to have an elevator lift over there. And at the time, the alderman was Federetti in the 5th District over here. And I talked to Federetti and stuff like that, but he didn't give me too much response, but he was concerned. But I kept calling CTA, we stood out there, Angel and I, we got those petitions. So now they're putting an elevator over in the Blue Line. I'm trying to find those signatures. I would like to have a plaque with all the people who went to Cook County, the whole medical district, Jesse Brown, and have that put up there. So the post office, I don't know if we work the post office or not, but I can say that that brief moment with the CTA and teachers and with them all the time.
I did go to a meeting of the retired letter carriers a few weeks ago and spoke with them. There was about 180 people in the room, and there was many veterans. We've done some outreach here, probably not enough, but I did want to just say that AFSCME and the laborers nationally did send letters opposing this bill, so they have signed on nationally, as well as the AFL-CIO nationally, and the state AFL-CIO here in Illinois has also sent letters to the senators. So we are engaging the broader labor movement, probably not to the extent that we should have. I think that the quickness with which this has happened in the last few weeks kind of took everyone by surprise. But we definitely will be sort of reconvening and figuring out our next steps after next week. But just another plea to please call the senators tonight. You can call and leave a message. When you use the script, there's a phone number on there. You just type in your zip code. And obviously, we only have 2 people to choose from, but call twice so you can call both senators. It'll shoot you straight to their offices, and you can leave a message or call tomorrow. But we are expecting this bill to be on the floor on Wednesday, if not Tuesday. So they are not wasting any time, and our window is very brief. So please just don't waste any time. Call tonight, call tomorrow, call every day. You can call every day. And make sure that they're hearing from us, because we are hearing that they're getting a lot of phone calls from the veteran service organizations, pressuring them to support this bill. So, we understand they're under a lot of pressure, but great points.
Yeah, just real quickly, I think you bring up some very good points, Howard, and we have to be in this this is a little like we're in this instant gratification society, but we're going to be in a struggle. We're going to have to fight this in the long haul. Our politicians are being unresponsive to this particular issue, and the majority of them are bad. And changing that takes a lot of work, it takes a lot of struggle, and it takes a lot of organizing. And we can form a coalition in Chicago, but that's actually not even enough to move something like this. We have to get downstate, we have to get to Wisconsin, we have to get to Indiana. I mean, and that is a huge task for, even with 3 national unions dedicated to this. That's a gargantuan effort, but that is what it's going to take to save this healthcare system. So, any other comments, questions, sharing?
Hi guys, I'm Scott Goldel from SEIU on the communications team. I'm just curious, and I don't know if this is something you could help us answer. What would, how would we want a senator or anybody to respond to the claim, well, I am following the lead, I've gotten these letters and support from certain veterans organizations. What should be, or what is our response, the counter argument to those claims from those organizations that our position is actually the correct one?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll just stand and yell. So, I mean, I do think that there is some hesitancy. I think there is some hesitancy in the Senate right now. We just had a phone call last night with Senator Baldwin herself about this bill, which she set within 24 hours notice, and we were pretty surprised by it, frankly. So I think she's understanding that there is some controversy now. She mentioned that there is some opposition among her colleagues that the BRAC piece of the bill is a problem, and that there may be some willingness to try and amend the bill. I think that they are in a difficult situation when you have veteran service organizations and all these other folks who are supporting a bill, and we're this little voice. But that's why we keep hammering home this point that we don't have a VA secretary, so we're not voting against the principles of this bill. But we don't think that this is the right step to take without knowing who the leadership is of the second largest agency in the federal government. That's going to be handling a major task, and should they be even maybe part of shaping that policy, maybe that's not in our best interest, but it could be a good message point. So I think that's that could be a way for them to kind of not oppose the bill on its merits, but certainly push things back and let's just take a step back. We're not going to kill this bill, but let's take a step back and take some of these other concerns into consideration.
Any other responses?
I also think it's just important to look at who's supporting it, and where is it coming from, and that is pretty exposing to the real motives behind it. And if the representatives can't see through that, I think that's a struggle. And the other thing I would say is, these VSOs are extremely, extremely important, but they are also really disconnected from their own base, where veterans don't want the VA to be privatized. Overwhelmingly, you ask veterans, do you want the VA to be privatized? No, 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 no. VSOs, they all say that they're against privatization. Duckworth and Durbin both said in our meetings that they are opposed to privatization. And yet, they are all supporting this bill. And I think we have to expose to them, do you not see the strategy that these interests that are putting this bill together are using? They're utilizing these strategies of, it's just this slight opening or expansion of choice. It's these small steps, because they have a 20-year strategy to privatize the VA. We, on the other hand, we don't have a 20-year strategy, and that's what we have to build, and that's what we're trying to do from a grassroots level, not from the top down. And, that's going to take a long time, but I feel like those are the other thing, the final thing I'll say is some of the VSOs have gotten it wrong. I mean, I'm an Iraq vet. They got it wrong about Iraq. They got it straight up wrong. And, they need to be held accountable to that. And sometimes these VSOs, sometimes they're wrong. And, I know that's kind of tough, and I know these representatives are in a tough spot to negotiate that, but I feel like that's important to put on the table. Like, VSOs, they have specific interests, And I don't think any of them, every time you ask them, if you ask the American Legion today, do they want the VA to be privatized? They will say no. And then you say, well, then why are you going to support this bill? It's because it's being they're being misled.
Can I add something else too? I meant to say this in my remarks, but one of the things that we've been saying to Congress is that we are so confused about is why this is the only solution that they have seemed to be able to come up with to fix this situation. There is no legislation that actually improves the VA structure itself. We aren't talking about, in fact, in this bill, there is no mention of staffing levels and making sure that there's appropriate staffing levels at the VA. We're not even having, it's not even in the dialogue to give more resources and funding and staff to the current VA structure. Why is that? The only argument that we can make right now is that the private sector is the solution. That's the only solution that we can come up with. So, I think that might be another helpful point for these senators to make. But we have had a real hard time getting that message through to people. And I had a senator's chief of staff say to me, well, privatization in this political environment has to be part of the solution. It just has to be part. And we are trying to decide what level of privatization is appropriate. And that was, I think that was from a Democrat, and it was pretty telling, kind of where their mindset is.
Can I just make one comment? So it's on purpose, right? We all know that. Whether we're talking about Chicago Public Schools, the CTA, the VA at the federal level, the game plan is very clear. You cut services. You make it like so it doesn't work, even though it's working. And then basically you say, oh, we got a solution here. It's the private sector. Okay, so that's exactly what's happening with Uber, with Lyft, with charter schools. It's all the same game, and that's exactly what they're going to do. Democrats are not going to support us, you in particular, for improving the VA as it stands. They're all in the game. So we've got to have that as part of our understanding how to develop the strategy. Because if we don't, and we make the main thing to try to convince the Democrats, that it's not going to work unless we have a mass movement that everybody's got to participate in.
Anyone else?
So what you said about the privatization and these bills they don't do anything to help the VA. I constantly wonder why they can't draft a bill to fully fund and fully staff the VA. I know there was something like that done in 2014, and the GOP blocked it. And anytime I talk to someone about it, their reasoning is it wasn't a clean bill. But neither are the rest of these bills. So why can't that happen? Like, how do we put pressure on these elected officials to do that without all these excuses?
We need a counteroffensive.
Yeah.
A good start would be coming up to our press conference tomorrow morning. It's going to be 10 a.m. at Federal Plaza. All the Right to Heal Coalition members are going to be there. AFGE, SEIU, NNU, veterans, we're going to have some picket signs. We're going to try to get some media, and we're going to deliver some petitions to our senators. And I think in the short term, they're getting a lot of pressure to vote the wrong way. But we just have to remind them, how is this vote going to look a few years down the road when you have a lot of veterans not getting the care they need, coming to complain to you and asking you, why did you vote for that terrible bill? So we're going to do what we can, and anyone who can come by. Pretty sure everyone's signed up to get updates on the list, but if you haven't, stop by our table and sign up to get updates.
I'm not sure the petition is on.
Yeah, it's nice. So.
So how do I make sure that this is working?
It should be on.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent, excellent. So my name is Rinda West, and I am the chair of the Workers' Rights Board of Chicago Jobs with Justice, which is the group that is here holding this hearing. And we hold hearings on issues that involve working people because we think that the general message that gets out to the public is not sympathetic to working people. The general message that gets out to the public is pretty hostile to working people. In fact, I used to teach, and it feels to me like basically anyone who serves is under attack, because public service is under attack, and public service unions are under attack. But also anyone who receives service is under attack, because when you undermine the servants, you also compromise the service. There were a number of points that were made today that I thought were really important. One is the importance of the Veteran Worker Alliance, which we heard about a number of times, both in this campaign, which to me is enormously exciting, that this campaign is reaching out through all the unions and to the veterans, and that is one of the important ways we build strength. Another thing I was very moved by was Erica's story of how valuable it is that the VA sees the veteran, that the veteran is understood, is loved at some important level. And I know as a teacher that I always strove to love my students in that same way, to honor them and respect them as individuals. And we don't get enough of that in this world, and it's vital. I think that Reggie talked about the broken promise to vets in terms of the bounced check. And I think that's an important message that needs to get out, that these are the people that you say, you go to the airport and you see somebody in uniform, oh, thank you for your service, and then it goes right over your head and you never think about them again. But that's a bounced check. You know, there's the lip service that's given to a veteran's service to the country, and it is not followed through on. We don't have billions of dollars. Sadly, nobody in this room had the foresight to inherit billions of dollars. What was the problem with that? So the Koch brothers can buy their politicians. We have to win the voters. We have to win the workers. We have to win the veterans. It is a long haul. It's not an overnight thing. These bills are probably going to pass. We have to get these jerks out of Congress and out of the White House, but we have to also be out in the streets. We have to reach out to one another. We have to see one another and understand one another's struggles. We have to change the conversation. The conversation now is about how public service is flawed. That is not the conversation we want. We don't want to be responding to the Koch brothers. We want to be setting the conversation and changing that conversation. So I would urge all of you, sign the petition, call your senators, post on social media, talk to your friends about your experiences with the VA. Put political pressure on, put social pressure on, and change the conversation. Thank you all so much for coming out tonight, and let's go. Let's get it.
So there's just a couple announcements. We already made the one about the press conference tomorrow. But there's this Saturday, May 19th. There's a Medicare for All town hall. I think a lot of us know that moving the VA to the private sector doesn't work because we have a broken healthcare system, right? I think those of us who aren't veterans know this pretty intimately. So there's Medicare for All Town Hall this Saturday, May 19th, 11 a.m. at the APWU, that's the American Postal Worker Union, Local 1. and has some flyers. So please attend it. This is a very important town hall. It's at 4217 South Halstead. So we not only need to fight to save the VA, but we need single payer, we need Medicare for all. That is part of, it's the same fight in my mind. So please make it out on Saturday. And then Aaron had a couple of announcements as well.
Yeah, so Memorial Day weekend's coming up. Memorial Day at 11 a.m. Vietnam Veterans Against the War About Face will be having our annual memorial down at the Vietnam Memorial, which is at Wacker and Wabash, 11 a.m. on Memorial Day. And then on that same day in Springfield, the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival, is having an Illinois veteran rally. So if you're interested in going to Springfield, participating in their action for the new Poor People's Campaign, there's flyers in the back about how to get involved with that.
So, and take some snacks and chips and food on your way out. I think we're done, but